What the heck? Really? Really? What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to another episode of Rock Pops. I'm your ringmaster and host, Rock Blackwell. And on this episode, we're talking UFC 202, Diaz McGregor Part 2. What I want to do on this episode is kind of recap the last fight, look at the pros and cons of each fighter, and then finally give you my pick. In UFC 196, we had McGregor versus Diaz. It was on 10 days notice. So, the UFC and Dana White went looking for a replacement fighter. And who did they find? But Nate Diaz, who had already called out Conor McGregor, saying that Conor McGregor had taken everything that Nate Diaz had been working for all these years by running his mouth, saying the same thing that Diaz said, but getting pushed. So Diaz wanted the fight. McGregor said, cool, let's go at it. They decided to do it at welterweight. That was Conor's idea because he said, hey Nate, it's only been 10 days. Make yourself comfortable. Get ready. I'll meet you at 170. So when they met, in that first round he was working Nate Diaz. Well, at least he busted his face up. He was also getting with that uppercut. In round 2, on the other hand, you can see that Conor McGregor was starting to lose some of his luster. He was starting to get tired. But not only was he getting tired, he started getting tagged. And when you get tagged, your legs go wobbly. It stiff hit and his legs went wobbly, and it was a wrap after that. So he made quick work of him, ground and pounded on him, flipped him over, gave him that rear naked, and that was a wrap. Going into fight number 2, what are the pros and cons of each fighter? Let's start with Nate Diaz. The pros is taller. And so the fact that Nate Diaz is taller gives him a decisive advantage, not only in height, but of course then in reach. Secondly, Nate's jiu-jitsu is far, far superior to Conor McGregor's. Thirdly, Nate's got a strong chin. He was rocking him. And though he was busted up, he never wavered. And 4, Nate Diaz has a full camp to prepare for Conor McGregor this time. He beat Conor McGregor on 10 days notice last time, folks. 10 days. Now, the cons. All the hits and everything that he's taken over the years. He cuts easily, he bleeds easily, and the reason that could be a con is even if it doesn't bother him, it can still impair his vision. Also, because he has such a wide boxing stance, he puts a lot of weight on his front leg and he doesn't check leg kicks very well. Lastly, one of the cons could be that Diaz can just simply be overconfident. Now let's turn to the pros for McGregor. Striking. I mentioned before that Diaz has the reach advantage, but Conor knows how to strike really, really well for MMA. He's a superior striker with his feet to Nate Diaz, at least in my opinion. Secondly, this time Conor has a full camp too. Now I know that may seem like that's not going to work in Conor's favor because I said it worked in Nate's favor. But the reason it can work in Conor's favor as well is because now you have the opportunity to train for that one opponent, which Conor McGregor never did before. In Conor McGregor's last 8 fights, 4 times he had somebody pull out at the last minute and he had to get a replacement to fight him. So what Conor normally does is train for any type of fighter at any time so he can go in and beat anybody. And while that sounds great on paper, and it has worked for Conor, it didn't work when you ran into someone who was taller and had more reach and had a durable chin that you couldn't just knock out even though they only had 10 days rest. And he's had people in his camp who were tall, southpaw, left-handed fighters as well. So I expect him to come out and be able to handle Nate Diaz specifically a little bit better. Cons is the reach. It is really hard to work your combinations and walk somebody down like Conor McGregor likes to do when they've got the reach advantage. Now that we've looked at the pros and cons, who's my pick? My heart tells me Conor McGregor. I want to pick Conor McGregor. My head tells me I don't see how he can beat Nate Diaz. I don't see how he can beat him because 6 months, 8 months is not long enough on the mat to catch up with the full range of martial arts that Nate Diaz has at his disposal. You can't knock someone out. You got to be able to go the distance or maybe submit them. And I just don't see that happening. So, even though my heart is with Conor McGregor, my head tells me Nate Diaz. So my pick is Conor McGregor. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy after what I just said. But you know what? In my heart, I think he's going to find a way to do it. He's going to dig down. He's enough of a real champion to dig down and win. You know what, Conor? I got your back, man. I don't see how you're going to do it, but I believe that you're going to do it. Now you got my pick. So, what's your pick? Comment below, let me know, and we'll do a review on it all. As always, keep it popping. Peace.